Okay, welcome. We are up to chapter 2. We probably will not finish the whole chapter this week. Get to around hopefully verse 14 or verse 15. And then hopefully next week we'll try to catch up a little bit and play catch up until Shavuot. The reason why we're not going to finish chapter 2 this week is because there are a lot of introductions. Oh, special guest. So there are a lot of introductions that I think are very necessary to understand the rest of this chapter and to understand the rest of the story. So that's going to take us a little bit of time, and we'll see how much we get through. So remember, chapter 1 ended off that Naomi and Ruth and Aki and Mrs. Fleshler, Naomi and Ruth just came to Beit Lechem, right, where Naomi was from, where Ruth has never been before, that we know of. And they were not greeted with pleasant greetings. Everyone was in upheaval. Naomi, you left, the to-be queen, so to speak, and you came back with a Moabite. The people that were not allowed to marry, the people that are opposite of Jews, you came back with a Moabite. And then the second chapter starts off. Okay, so if you have the packets, there should be many extra. So, Naomi moda leisha ish gibor chayil mimishpachas Elimelech ushmo Boaz. So Naomi had a moda, a relative, leisha, ish gibor chayil. Boaz here is described as an ish gibor chayil from the family of Elimelech. Rashi points out he was a karov, he was a relative. How is he related? So he was actually a nephew of Elimelech. Elimelech had a brother named Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. So Elimelech had a nephew, Boaz. So Boaz was related, and he was a nephew of Elimelech. He's described as an ish gibor chayil, and the second parak makes a point of saying ushmo Boaz. So we'll see that seemingly insignificant fact, just telling us who his name is, will actually be very significant. So who was Boaz? And with that we'll understand hopefully a little bit more about the unbelievable divine providence, the unbelievable hashkacha that's going to bring Boaz and Ruth together. So we just pointed out Boaz is from the family of Elimelech. Now, so a few Gemaras that talk about Boaz. So first of all, he's described as an ish gibor chayil. We have another place where a similar description is given, and that is in Shmos in Perek Yudches Pasuk Chaf Aleph, that Moshe is told to go and find people that are anshe chayil, people that are strong. Yirei Elokim, they fear God. Anshe emes, that they're men of truth. Sonei batza, they don't like money. And then the pasuk says, out of all those descriptions, Moshe chose anshe chayil. He chose men of chayil. So the commentators, the Malbim and others point out, it sounds like anshe chayil includes all those positive attributes that Moshe was told to choose. Yirei Elokim, they fears God. Anshe emes, people of truth. Sonei batza, people that despise money, wealth. So anshe chayil seems to be all inclusive of that. It should be ringing a bell of Eishes chayil. Eishes chayil miyimtza, anshe chayil, Eishes chayil, right? So here we're going to learn more about a woman who's going to become the Eishes chayil, and she's going to marry the person who's introduced to us as anshe chayil. Now remember that we'll see in a second. Beis Lechem right now, we pointed out already in the beginning, they weren't in a good place. It was a society which, as the Megillah started off, was full of famine. We pointed out it's a spiritual famine and a physical famine. And they greeted Naomi in such a disrespectful way. Meaning, Beis Lechem, the place that's supposed to produce... Oh, phew, Mrs. Spillman's here, okay. So the place that's supposed to produce royalty, right, is producing a people that treat people disrespectfully. And yet, Boaz remains anshe chayil. Now, there are two Gemaras in Baba Basra that give us more of an insight about Boaz. So the Gemara says actually that Boaz had 60 children, right? 60 children, 30 men, 30 women. The Gemara in Baba Basra, Daf Tzadi Aleph, it says that Iftzan, there's a judge named Iftzan in Shoftim, he's actually Boaz. It's the same person. Iftzan is called Boaz. And it says that he made 120 feasts for his children, 30 of his sons and 30 of his daughters, and unfortunately, all of them passed away. All of them. You can imagine. We can't imagine. But 60 children, that he made big feasts for, that were also relatives of royalty, all passed away. It says that when Rus came, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Oso Hayom, that day, Shabasa Rus, that Rus came, Rus HaMoaviyah, LaEretz Yisrael, Mesa Ishto Shel Boaz. As the theme of the Megillah was in the beginning. All right, the last thing Boaz has left is his wife, and she passes away. And at that day, that's when Rus came into Eretz Yisrael. V'hainu de Amri Inchi, and this is the phrase that people say, Ad delo shachiv shichva, kaima menu baisei. That people say before the deceased dies, the person who will be next in charge, next in its stead, next in its place, arises. What's the lesson? Says the Rashbam on Baba Basra. Right, Rashi's grandson wrote on part of Shas. We don't have Rash, we have the Rashbam. He says, the Gemara is teaching you what? Shakadosh Baruch Hu makdim, a famous principle, refuah lamaka. Hashem prepares the cure before the disease. V'yesh lo la'adam liftoach b'Kadosh Baruch Hu. So the opening part of the second parak, Rus arrives into Eretz Yisrael. Boaz has just lost everything. And says the Gemara, you should know, he was Iftzan, now he's Boaz, and the cure for him has arrived. And a person therefore has to believe in Hashem. It's an amazing thing. We pointed out that this is the book that is the bridge between judges and Malchus and kingship. And it seems like we have to know this. We have to know it's part of sounds like the DNA of a king, because he's supposed to instill faith into the people. They're looking up to him, someone who's strong, someone who's confident, someone who lives with Hashem. And it starts off saying that you have to know, even Boaz was a judge. He judged for 7 years, 60 children that he made, each one he made a feast for, 120 feasts total. Yeah, and what happened was, he lost his wife, but on that day came Rus right into Eretz Yisrael.
What about Naomi, and how many wives did he have?
Who? What is it?
Boaz.
Right, that I didn't see a Gemara about, but that's a great question. I don't know how many wives he had. So that's Boaz. Now, the Megillah points out, Ushmo Boaz. His name was Boaz. And Chazal, in their great wisdom, they pick up on so many nuances in the Megillah. So it says, the Medrash Lekach Tov, it points out, many tzaddikim in Tanakh, it first says Ushmo, and then it says Boaz. Ushmo Kish, Ushmo Shaul, Ushmo Yishai, Ushmo David, Ushmo Mordechai, Ushmo Elkanah, Ushmo Boaz. But Rishayim, Haim Kodmin Lishmam, Novel Shmo, Goliath Shmo. And it points out first the name, and then it says Ushmo. So the commentaries say, this Rav Moshe Miller, he points out, and also Rav Aaron Lubyansky, he points out that, what's the difference between Ushmo Boaz or Uboaz Shmo? So they point out that tzaddikim, they live selflessly. They themselves, what they're going to get out of the situation, it's almost an afterthought. Maybe it is even an afterthought. They live solely to do the right thing in the right moment. They do what's right. And that's the difference, one of the differences between tzaddikim and Rishayim. Rishayim, it's all about Goliath Shmo. I'm trying to build myself. And we pointed out that one of the downfalls of Elimelech when he left was Machlon V'Kilyon. What they do? They married Lahem Nashim. For themselves they married. Not for what marriage is supposed to be, but for themselves they married. And they were the great leaders. So this is contrasting that. Ushmo Boaz, he was someone, even in a generation of so much upheaval and so much disaster and so many things that were happening that were backwards of what kingship is supposed to be, still Ushmo Boaz. Boaz remained Boaz, and he still lived selflessly, and he still lived purposefully, and he lived the way a tzaddik is supposed to live, as opposed to Rishayim. So this is all part of the beginning. Boaz's background, what has happened before we meet Boaz. Boaz was a tzaddik. Okay, so now, so it's an interesting question. Naomi's she comes in very poor, and she needs food. So after such a beautiful buildup of who Boaz is, so there should be an obvious question. Naomi, who do you go to when you need a few extra dollars? Who do you call when you need some extra grain, extra wheat? You call your relative. So why didn't she just give him a call? Boaz, we just pointed out, Ushmo Boaz, he's a tzaddik. He's going to take care of her. So I saw an interesting comment from the Malbim. The Malbim points out that Naomi, she really wanted to be self-sufficient. she'd rather get grain, rather get food from the end of a field, peah. Some of the halachas of peah, leave the end of your field for the poor people, because she wanted to be fully sustained from Hashem himself, directly from Hashem. We'll see that Ruth is going to follow suit. And I think we pointed out in previous weeks, that this is really the opposite of Sdom. On the opposite of Sdom, but instead of always relying on other people, right? That we pointed out, that was really what Lot ran away from. He was always relying on Avram Avinu, and he ran away to Sdom. Self-sufficiency, independence, standing on your own 2 feet fully is something which is part of the seeds of redemption, part of the seeds of building a king and a queen. So it's just interesting here that Naomi, right, according to the Malbim, said, I don't want from anybody. I'd rather get straight from Hashem. And there's many, many Gemars about this. A person would rather, a little bit of their own than a lot of someone else's. The things you work for, the things that you have to go and schwitz and you have to go and get, those things are part of you because you put in the extra time. Things given to you on a silver platter, so you're not going to build a person that way. And here we're building the great-grandmother of David HaMelech. And so it says that Naomi, she didn't want to rely. She wanted to go straight and get from Hashem. Okay. Another introduction. We're going to see a lot of many, many, many details here, and that seem to be very trivial. And I'm not claiming to have an understanding of every single one of them. I haven't seen enough to know exactly why every little detail is mentioned. However, it's fascinating that there's only 4 chapters of this Megillah, and so much of the second chapter is seemingly minute details. How she collected, somebody noticed her, the way he spoke to her. I just want to point out one interesting medrash that touches upon this, and I think it's very essential for trying to understand how to build a leader and how David HaMelech was born. So the medrash is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, Moshe Hayaroa. Moshe was a shepherd. Okay. So the medrash says, so everything Hashem writes is pure. There's meaning to it, meaning behind it. What does it mean Moshe was a shepherd? So says the Medrash Rabbah in Shmos. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not, Hashem does not, no sein gedula, does not give greatness to somebody until what? So what would you say? Until he passes, has a PhD, until he writes himself, until he passes the big tests. If you can memorize thousands of pages and write me 40 different essays and, know all of Torah inside and outside, then you're destined for leadership. That's what I would say. Says the Medrash, Ad shebotkehu bedavar katan, until you get tested with something very small. Famously, we know that what happened with Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Medrash says, 2 gedolei olam, 2 leaders of the world, shebatkan HaKadosh Baruch Hu bedavar katan. Hashem tested them with something very small. V'nimtzu ne'amanim, they were found faithful, and next thing was v'helon l'gdula, and he raised them up to greatness. So, one was David HaMelech, but one was Moshe. He said the sheep ran away, and Moshe went to go find the sheep, and he said, Amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu, nimtzat neman betzon, you're faithful with sheep, so bo urei tzoni, come and be the shepherd of my sheep. Right? Out of all the things Moshe Rabbeinu did, he grew up in Paro's house. He made it out, the Midrashim talk about how he helped every Jew, different bricks on their shoulders. But this Medrash says that this small thing that he did, that is what Hashem saw that and raised him up for greatness. So I'm sure there are different explanations, but one of the explanations that I think is true is that when it comes to saving someone's life, let's say a person's presented with saving someone's life, or you get a big chesed opportunity, a yeshiva calls, a kollel calls. This is not a fundraising pitch, no. Yes, listen, we really need $1 million. We have a great project, So what's pushing that person? Well, this is exciting. I don't get a call every day to give $1 million and donate. I can build so much. What often pushes a person is not 100%, altruistic reasons. I want to be the guy that gives $1 million. Not only because I have my name up there. It'll feel great. No, I give $1 million. It'll feel good. When you do a small thing, like chasing a sheep, when nobody notices, what motivates you to do that? Where does that come from? No one's going to see you. No one's going to give you a round of applause. No one's going to put your name up on the shul saying, this is our great rabbi. He served 40 years. he actually chased a sheep and he caught it, right? That's not what happens. This is a rabbi, he wrote many books, he led a congregation, he spoke beautifully. Those are things you hear about. He chased a sheep, and really that's his, on his grave, that's what's going to say on the tombstone. I am Moshe Rabbeinu, who chased a sheep, a shepsala. And it doesn't say that, right? But what's the point? The point is when you're faced with small things that no one sees, behind the scenes. And it's very hard because we love to get credit for things. It's a natural kavod, honor, right? It's from the word kaved, heavy. Everyone wants to feel heavy. Everyone wants to feel honored. That's a normal thing. To live such a life where no matter who's watching, no matter what's going on, you still do what's right, that means that it's a real value. It's implanted in you because no matter what happens, you're going to do it anyways. You're not motivated or deterred by the people watching you and the people that are there. So Moshe Rabbeinu, that is something which brought him up to Gedula. So I think that's a very important introduction to Ruth. She's going to do a lot of seemingly minor things, but we have to change the approach. The minor things build a person. The major things are good too. They'll get the spotlight and they'll get a lot of fanfare, but it's the minor things that really build a person, as we have by Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech, the Medrash says. So Ruth is what we're going to have now. We're meeting Ruth and Boaz, and they're each going to do a lot of things that seemingly look minuscule but are very, very important. Because those are each going to be building blocks to show that, she has a value. And she has a value of kindness and a value of modesty. And once you see the inner part of a person, which comes out when they do the smaller acts, then you know that they're someone who's destined for greatness. And that's what Boaz saw. Okay, so let's, with those introductions, let's proceed. So Vatomer Ruth, the second verse says, she told Naomi, I'm going to go to the field. It sounds like there's a back and forth over here. Who's going to go? Should I go? Ruth says, I'm going to go. The princess from Moab, who gave up everything, I'll go look like a pauper, like a poor person in the fields. I don't mind. I'll go and collect. Maybe I'll go find somebody who he'll show me kindness. I'll find favor in his eyes. Interesting. Ruth here is looking for not just to bring home some food, but she's looking for more than that. She just came from a nation that was so opposite of Judaism, and she converted, right? And now she's looking for companionship. She wants someone that she could build a life with together. So she's saying, I'm gonna find someone, hopefully, asher emtza chein be'einav. We're gonna find grace. I'll find grace in his eyes. Vatelech, So, okay. Vatelech, vatavo, vatelake pasada. So she went into a field. Acharei hakotzim, behind the reapers. Vayikar mikra, chelkas hasada. Now we're gonna stop on these words of vayikar mikra. Vayikra mikra, a happenstance happened. Randomness. Usually we believe in divine providence, right? Divine hashachar pratis. What do you mean randomness? Vayikar mikra. So this is very important because we have thousands, if not more than thousands, millions, random events that happen. And if you break down your hour into minutes and break down the minutes into smaller minutes, seconds, you'll see how many things are just happening to add up. It happened to be that the car ended up going, and then there was a green light, and then it ended up being in the parking spot. I ended up getting there, and then ended up... And you can make a list of your own. People have given this advice. Take your own notebook and write down a list of happenstances, mikra, that's happened. I heard one time that mikra, if you switch the letters, it's rak me Hashem, only me Hashem, right? That's our belief, right? Mikra is rak me Hashem. So what does it mean by yikra mikra? So the Medrash says that actually a malach pushed her to the field of Boaz. So I saw, what does it mean a malach pushed her? It doesn't mean, there's an invisible person there that's like, shoo, and she goes flying, right? That's not what it means. Vayikra mikra means that these happenstances that happen are messages. They're messages to us. Mikra, the Malbim points out, others point out, things that happen that like speed things up in an unusual way. So here she goes to look for a field. What field does she come upon? The field of Boaz. What are the chances, So that's Vayikar Mikra. We have a similar language when Eliezer was looking for a wife in Bereshis, Chavdalad Yud Beis. Hakra no lefanai hayom. Grant me a hakra. Make it a mikra. What's he asking for? Make it random coincidence? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Speed up the process. Show me something that's unusual. That, speed it up. I don't want to spend so much time looking. So too Russ, she doesn't want to spend the whole time, if she has to, she will, going through all the fields. Vayikar Mikra, that hashkacha happened, and that's one of the big themes here. Things that happen randomly, so we're not always, if ever, able to understand why Hashem did them for us. But you could understand, okay, this is Hashem speaking to me. when you start introspecting, sometimes you understand a little bit, maybe what Hashem wants from me. If something random happens, someone just told me they were talking to their children, and they got a little bit upset at their children. They weren't happy with themselves, and then their child responded with a great question, because the parent told them, you're not doing the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, honoring your parents. So the son asked, why? I'm not doing an aveira. It's just not a mitzvah, right? I didn't like doing an aveira. And the father's like, oh, that's so interesting. And all of a sudden, the father calmed down, and he was fine, and he went on, right? So you have Hashem's sometimes sending us calming down messages. He's sending us, ways to relax. He sends us ways to have more bitachon in me. There's everywhere. They're everywhere. So the more we're open to it and we see them, we realize that they're not a mikra. The word mikra is often associated with the nation of Amalek. Amalek is a numerical value of Safek. The word mikra is mentioned by the story of Amalek. So I saw a beautiful thing. Mikra is the word means random, happenstance, right? So Vayikar Hashem to Bilam, it was random, seeming to be random. Keri, so Keri literally means little semen. Right? A seminal mission is Keri. Keri, what is that? Casually. Keri. So I saw pointed out a beautiful thing that backwards the word is Yakar. Amalek's whole perspective of life was every development of a person is all random. Everything is random. And we're going to put that into the Jewish people. Make you think it's all one big doubt. And we take the word Keri, casually, happens to be, and we flip it to Yakar. Yakar means precious. We view every little drop is precious. So to here, Vayikra Mikra, so it wasn't just a happenstance, but it was Hashem, a malach pushed her, meaning she understood from this is where she's supposed to be. And we'll see that Boaz does the same thing. Okay, so proceeding forward. In Pasuk Dal, V'hinei Boaz bami beis lachem. V'hinei, suddenly, something happened. V'hinei Boaz bami beis lachem, v'yomer lekotzrim, Hashem imachem, v'yomer lo yivrech Hashem. So, okay, we're not going to have so much time, but V'hinei Boaz bami beis lachem, where did he come from? Gemara says in Brachos, and the Medrash says there was just an enactment that was made. And it got the approval, divine approval from Shemayim. One of the three things that were enacted and got divine approval. What was this? You should greet people with Hashem Yimachem. The Mishnah in Brachos and Daf Nudal says that Hiskinu she'adam shoel eshlom chaveiro b'shem. You should greet a person with the name of Hashem Yimachem. That's a one which is it needs divine approval, because you can't just use Hashem's name and mention it in vain. And yet people use this as a greeting. And that's what Boaz enacted. So let's just stop for a few minutes and think about this. Boaz just came from the Sanhedrin. Yeah? They came and they just made an enactment. They made an enactment that everyone should greet each other with the name of God. So what does that mean? Once again, Beis Lachem was in a place that was very opposite of what we call a Tselem Elokim, being in the image of God. They were not representing the God that we believe in. They were doing things and acting in a way that was not the way Jews should be acting. And Boaz and his colleagues thought of a solution. The solution was greeting people with the name of Hashem, which means, and every person as Hashem created us we're created b'tselem Elokim, in the divine image, which means we in ourselves and in our fellow man and woman, we all have a divine part to us. It's the godly part of us. It's the part that not everyone always sees. It's the part that maybe we'll notice on Yom Kippur when we're looking around and we see somebody really into it. But there are people that have a divine part. We all have a divine part to us. Tselem Elokim. It sounds like Boaz wanted to restore the Tselem Elokim. He wanted to restore that which was lacking. People weren't seeing each other in a positive way. Positive way means they saw the Tselem Elokim in the other person. What was the solution that he decided to enact? They decided to enact. We should greet everybody with the shame of Hashem. Just want to read one paragraph. Imagine the following scene. A visiting rabbi is coming to town. Many of the locals think he's a pompous fool. This visiting rabbi is an outsider, an unwanted intruder. Perhaps he dresses in a fashion to which they are unaccustomed. Perhaps his beard does not look the way they think a beard should look. Or maybe he espouses views that do not conform to their way of thinking. But they're required to greet him with the words, God is with you, articulating the actual name of God. What are they going to do? Are they going to lie while pronouncing the divine name? That's unthinkable. The God is with you imperative compels them to re-examine their relationship with this visitor. It forces them to expand their vision of what Yisrael includes. It obliges them to be broad, accessible, and welcoming, though until now they might have been narrow-minded, untouched, and hostile. This reform changes the initial assumption one makes when seeing another person. It demands an openness to the presence of God in every human being, so that the leader of the generation will declare to his field hands, God is with you. True, this edict might sometimes require a misuse of the name of God, but Boaz asserts the principle, it is a time to act for God, even if it requires voiding the Torah. The situation within Yisrael was so deplorable that the most extreme measures were condoned. So this is the introduction. It's an unbelievable thing. Boaz, just by doing a mundane thing, like we started, greeting somebody else with Hashem's name, was his way, his solution to restoring the Tzelem Elokim, the divine image of a person. It's unbelievable. We would think, if to go save the world, you have to, make a new program, start a new chesed organization. And Boaz says, don't forget about the small acts, like we started off with. Greeting somebody in a proper, I remember I had a Rebbe, he said by Kiddush Levana, the custom is when you say Shalom, you say Shalom Aleichem 3 times, right? Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem. So I remember the Rebbe pointed out, when you say it, look the person in the eyes. I remember it was such a small thing, but all of a sudden it changes everything. You're speaking to somebody, Shalom Aleichem, you're greeting them. That small thing, so we want big things, a big chesed project, give a big donation. A small smile gives life. It gives life to somebody. And Boaz, in his great wisdom, understood that. Right? Before he was called Iftzan, the judge. Now it's Ushmo Boaz. Boaz is Bo-uz. In him was strength. Oz, right? Hashem Oz Lamo Yitain. He gave us strength. Even when things seem minuscule, overcome yourself. Don't ridicule the minuscule. Yeah? Don't. The minuscule, the small things, the minute, that's how you're going to build yourself. That's how we're going to build ourselves.
So what does the Midrash say as to what he was doing in Beit Lechem?
What Boaz was?
Yes. It says he arrived from Beit Lechem.
Boaz, he bought mi Beis Lechem. The Midrash says he came from the Sanhedrin, but I think it means he came from his house. He came.
Oh, so he lived in Beit Lechem.
Yeah, he lived in Beit Lechem. He lived in Beit Lechem, and they just finished, enacting such an enactment. And now he came to his field, and now what does he see? And this is where it gets very exciting. After he just tried to restore the Tzelem Elokim, he's going to encounter a lady who seems to hit all the qualifications: small deeds, modesty, wisdom, putting herself aside for the greater good. She was a princess, and now she is down there just collecting for her mother-in-law. So Boaz says, continuing forward. Vayomer Boaz l'naro hanitzav ala kotzrim. He asked this lad that was standing over the reapers, lemiha nara hazos. So who is this nice girl? Who is she? So Chazal, the Gemara in Shabbos says, it's not like Boaz, right? Boaz, one of the leaders of the Jewish people, just randomly inquire about, pretty women in the field. So it says, the Gemara says that, V'chidarko shel Boaz lishol benara. What does that mean? Amar Belazar, no, dvar chachma rabba. He saw some wisdom there. Instead of taking 3 sheaves, she took 2 sheaves. The way the halacha says, when you're collecting the field, when you're collecting the stalks from the field, she took 2 and not 3. Thereby, she was acting in accordance with halacha, that 3 stalks lying together are not considered to be gleanings left for the poor, rather only 2. So he saw something there which is very special. Dvar chachma. She was following the rules. And she was doing, what she's supposed to be doing. So Boaz noticed, and other midrashim say how modestly she was collecting them, the way she would bend down, the way she would get back up, the way she was... And he saw that in her, and he's like, wow, that's, so who is this? Really, who is this? I just came from, my people are not acting the way they're supposed to. And all of a sudden, I noticed something. Remember, he noticed the small things. Yes, she was also, the Medrash says, was extremely beautiful. She was. That's not what that's not what he noticed. She had chachma, she was a tnua, she was modest. Pasuk 6, V'yan an ar, so the Nar replied, yeah, she's Rust, the Moabiyah, he hashava. She came back with Naomi, and then he goes and tells her that she was there from the morning. Okay. So, which is interesting, by the way, that I heard from Rav Aaron Lapiansky. He says, she returned with Naomi. She's never been to Beis Lechem before. We pointed this out earlier, the word shava. She was so much identified with a Jew. Now she's even, she converted. She was so much identified as a Jew that it was like she was returning. She in herself was returning to who she was as a Jew. So, okay. So, going forward a little bit. Vayomer Boaz El Rus Halo Shamata Biti Al Telchi Lilkot. So all of a sudden now Boaz addresses her with in such a nice way. My daughter. I skipped one. Oh, Pasuk Zayin. Right. Yeah. We're gonna skip Zayin. Yeah. The Nara just tells her. He just tells Boaz that she's been there from the morning. Okay. Yeah. Time's a little short. Yeah. So okay. So then the 8th Pasuk tells her that Vayomer Boaz Al Rus Halo Shamata Biti Al Telchi Lilkot B'stei Acher. So now this is very interesting. He tells her, don't go to another field. Says the Medrash, a fascinating line. Vayomer Boaz al Rus, halo shamata biti, al telchi lilko b'sadei acher. Don't go to someone else's field. As it says, lo yelecha elokim acher mal panai. Right? The pasuk that says you shouldn't have other gods. Don't go to another field, because that would be like the verse of don't have other gods. What does that mean? What does having idol worship, other gods, have to do with going to another field? So this is why that introduction was so important about Vayaker Mikra. Boaz understood. If this lady's here, he also understood. This is hashkacha. This is min hashamayim. Don't go somewhere else, right? Stay here, as she was planning to do. And he's saying, I see it. This is something which is very divine. Why should she stay in the field? Because it's hashkacha, and Hashem is speaking to her. You chanced upon the field. Now Boaz comes, and Boaz notices you. Stay in this field. Okay, the next verse says, Einecha basada asher yiktzorun v'alachta acharein. Keep your eyes on the field. And now Boaz begins a whole conversation with her. Keep your eyes on the field. They are reaping, and follow them. I've ordered the men to not really take advantage of you. It says, and when you're thirsty, make sure you go to the jars and drink some of the water that the men have drawn. So, when did he say this? It says, I commanded them, I've ordered the men, not to harm you, not to touch you. So when did he? We don't have any recollection of him saying this to anybody. So when he said, Lemir Nara Hazos, who is this lady? So the Targum says, from what nation is she? And I saw an explanation. What it means is, he wasn't just asking, who is she? He's like, is she attached to anybody? Does she come with any strings attached? Is she married to anybody? Who is she? He was alluding to the fact that really he wanted her for herself. So in that question of Lemir Nara Hazos was everything. No one else, hands off. No one else. Treat her properly. I see something here which is divine. Okay, we'll just do a little bit more. Time's running late. Let's see, what should we? Okay, let's read the next pasuk. So you see it says Vayan Boaz Vayomer la Hugadli. So Boaz said in reply, I've been told of you all that you did for your mother-in-law. He heard, once again, the small things that you did for mother-in-law. How you left your father and mother in the land of your birth and came to a people you had not known before. Reminiscent of Avram Avinu. Lech lecha me'artzecha. He says here, you left the moladetech. You left your homeland. Even though you despised it and you rejected it, it's still a part of you. Just like Avram Avinu. Leave your homeland. Avram's homeland was full of avodah zarah, idol worship. And yet it's still a big deal to leave that place that you grew up. Everyone has a natural warm feeling to the place that they grew up. So that's reminiscent of Avram Avinu. So he's saying, I heard what you did. You taking care of your mother-in-law. You left everything. I mean, he's seeing much more in Rus. Now he gives her a bracha. Yishalem Hashem palech utihi maskuratech shlema. You should have full reward. Hashem should reward you. And what should happen? You should go asher basa lachsos tachas knafav. So Hashem should give you a full reward from under whose wings you have sought refuge. Just maybe one more thing, and we'll close with this. The Medrash says that this word here, you should have a full reward, is alluding to the fact that she's going to produce shlomo, completion. Meaning Hashem should give you complete reward the same way you're so complete in your deeds. The small acts show that you're complete. And it says, the Medrash says, V'kama gadol kochi shel gomei chasadim. How great is acts of chesed, which we know is one of the foundations of Rus. She'ein chasin, you're not going to dwell under different angels or the wings of the earth. Rather, where do you end up? Ela b'tzel misha amar b'haya ha'olam. You're going to go under the refuge of the one who said, who brought the world into existence. Shenamar, as the pasuk says in Tehillim, Ma yakar chastecha Elokim uvnei Adam betzel knafecha yechsayun. So the acts of chesed, they come, the small acts, which come from a great place, because that's the place that's fully with Hashem, the complete place. What does that grant a person? That grants a person they're going to end up dwelling under the Kanfei Hashchina, under Hashem's refuge. Part of why they didn't want to take food from other people, because the pasuk says in Malachi, when the Mashiach comes, we're all going to be relying fully on Hashem. We're not going to be relying on other people. When you live outside of yourself, what happens is you live more the way we want to live when Mashiach comes. How do we bring Mashiach? Everyone has a lot of different answers how to bring Mashiach, right? But the more we live like the people that Hashem wants for when Mashiach comes, that's definitely going to bring it closer. So the small acts of chesed which come, like we saw from Moshe Rabbeinu with the sheep and Rus, the Medrash says, Kama gadol kolchan shel gomecha, how great are they? They get you straight under divine refuge, under nobody else. The same way Rus didn't want to take, right? They didn't want to rely, her Naomi, on Boaz, only from Hashem, like the Malbim said, and she can live outside of herself, do it in the way that she knows how to do, modestly, with wisdom. So, such a gomle chesed, such a person who can live outside of themselves, which is probably the hardest part of chesed, is to take yourself fully out of it and just do chesed from the other person's perspective. And Avram Avinu, Rus, Avram Avinu are very similar. What was he known for? The two things he was known for, Emunah and chesed. Rus, so far, is known for her Emunah and her bitachon, to just go. The Medrash says that that many tzaddikim are so poor to show that they still had faith in, that they still had faith in Hashem. Here she is as a pauper, gleaning in the fields, but it's Vayikar Mikra. Hashem runs the world. He'll take care of me. And it's happening like that. And Hashem is taking care of her. Emunah and chesed are the two things that Avram Avinu is known for primarily. Rus is also known for that. Her emunah, how she just went with Naomi, v'dafkaba, and she cleaved to her, and her chesed. Rav Wolbe writes beautifully, those two traits of a person, they come together in coming outside of yourself. Avram Avinu looked at the whole world and said, Miu balabira, who's the king of the palace? He was able to see everything outside of himself. Not from his own perspective, but he looked outside of himself, and he saw, wow, there's Hashem everywhere. To see Hashem everywhere, you have to go very much outside of yourself, and to notice Him everywhere, even when it's hard, even through all the 10 tests he had, but Hashem was there. Rus is also very similar. Her emunah and her chesed is a person who lives outside of himself. And as we're trying to understand who a king is, we mentioned the Rambam calls a king, he's the leiv kol ha'am, he's the heart of the whole nation. He lives totally for the people, totally outside of himself. He lives with Hashem's mission in mind of bringing the people closer to Him, and he's able to live totally outside of himself. So how do you get there? By small acts of chesed, Boaz with his greetings, Rus with her helping her mother-in-law, and the small gleanings of the field. Maybe just one more pasuk Yudalid. Mayomer la Boaz la Esa Ochel. Come over here and partake of the meal, and dip your morsel in the vinegar, dip your bread in the vinegar. Vateshev mitzad hakotzrim. And then he sat down beside the reapers, and he handed her roasted grain, and she ate. Yeah, vatochal vatizba vatosar. She ate. She was full, vatosar, and she had left over. So, this idea, she ate, and then she was full. So contrast that to vayihi ra'av ba'aretz, as the Megillah starts off. Everyone's always hungry. No one has enough. A dysfunctional society has a lot of people running around with never having enough. Yeah, maybe you can imagine certain societies maybe we live in today. Yeah, it's never enough. The 5 million, you need 10, you need 20. It's never enough. And if I don't get my name out there, if I don't, make it on the front page, it's not enough. I need to be the best. And yet you see the Megillah emphasizes that she was satisfied. And just the Medrash here says, and this will end off, that Boaz told her, the word la here, the Medrash picks up, doesn't have the usual dot in the hay, it's called the mapik hay. So the Medrash picks up on that, and it says, you can read it low, like lamed aleph. No. It says, is this on the next pasuk? No. So v'tomer emtzachein be'einecha, is that the next pasuk? No. No. So it says, Vanochi lo ehyeh ka'acha shivchosecha. You should know, Rus, you're not going to be one of the maidservants. So she said, let me find favor in your eyes, referring to Pasuk Yud Gimel, my master, for you have comforted me, and you have spoken to the heart of your maidservant. So the Medrash says that Boaz told her, you're not going to be one of the maidservants. Rather, what are you going to be? You're going to be one of the imahos. Amar la chas shalom, ein at mina amahos, ela mina imahos. Don't think that you're going to be from the maidservants. Rather, you're going to be from the imahos. Now, it's interesting that she's called from the imahos. Yeah, so I don't know if we read this pasuk in the 13th pasuk. It could be that we skipped it. The Tomer, Ruth says, Emtzachein be'inecha. So, I found favor in your eyes. Ki nechamtani. You gave me nechama, consolation. Different places, Rashi points out that nechama doesn't just mean consolation, but it's a total change of heart, total change of thinking. If you look in Bereshis, it says that he totally changed the way she was thinking. V'chi dibarti alev shivchasecha. You spoke to my heart. You spoke to my heart. You spoke right to me. You saw past everything, and you got right down to who I am. So, va'anochi lo eya ka'acha shivchasecha. So, I'm not going to be like one of the maidservants. And the Medrash says, yeah, you're not going to be like one of the maidservants. You're going to be like one of the imahos. And what this will end off is that imahos is a mother of the Jewish people. A mother of the Jewish people, they implant spiritual DNA into their descendants. It's not just the physical, but it's also a spiritual. It's also spiritual imahos, obviously. Shifra and Puah were also the imahos of the Jewish people. Why they call it Shifra and Puah? So Rashi says, because they udinat at the baby. Rashi, they made a little ooh sounds to the baby, the small things. They were mishapres, they fixed up the vlad. They fixed it up, made sure it's okay. And they're called Shifra and Puah. And there the pasuk says, Vayas lahem batim. Hashem made them houses of kahuna, of priesthood, and leviah. They were the mothers of the Jewish people. So too here, Boaz is saying, I see in you, you're destined for greatness. You're doing so many positive things. And it's coming from a place that's a real place of kingdom, of chesed, of coming out of yourself. And Boaz was able to see that. And as he's restoring the Tzelem Elokim, they see somebody who is imbuing that. And yeah, okay. So we'll end here. I'm sorry, I went a little bit over time. And hopefully we'll do a little faster next time, finish off the second parak, and make our way through the third chapter. Thank you very much.